Meet Jinu, a guy who's basically married to one game, Tower of Trials. While everyone else is still struggling through early levels, he's already conquered everything, not just cleared it. He's the only player in the world to reach level 100, the undisputed rank 1. But the moment he finishes the game, reality begins to change. The world of Tower of Trials becomes real. Skills, monsters, and systems all bleed into everyday life. For Jinu, it's the perfect scenario. He knows everything, every mechanic, every hidden trick. This is his world now, and he's completely in control. Just as everything starts going perfectly for him, Truck-kun decided to say hi, and Jinu is left in a 10-year coma, removed from the very world he was meant to dominate. When he finally wakes up, everything has changed. Even his parents now have summons, and the news is filled with people clearing dungeons like it's completely normal. Then a system notification appears, asking if he's ready to start the tutorial. Not long after waking from his 10-year coma, my guy resumes life at home, but with a very different twist. He absorbs everything he can about this new world that has merged with the video game. For example, duels and raids are now everywhere. Dungeons must be cleared, and the Tower of Trials has become a real physical structure. The entire concept of the digital game has fully materialized into reality. 3 years after this strange merging phenomenon, humanity has adapted and now coexists with the evolved world. A low-ranking scroll could at best give you a D rank, but most rewards ended up being F rank. Higher-level scrolls offered better chances, going up to S rank, but with this one, a D is the best Jinu can hope for, and I definitely don't mean his package. Jinu is just praying for something usable. He'd even settle for an E rank if it came down to it. Bro just wants something workable. With that hope, our boy tears open the summoning scroll, activating its effects. Judging by his reaction, Jinu is genuinely excited because he can't wait to see what a real summon looks like in person. Suddenly, blue lightning crashes down violently, scaring the life out of him. Jinu watches in complete shock, the torn scroll lying on the ground. The system calls out and to his surprise confirms that he has summoned an X-rank wind fairy. In other words, something far from average. Completely stunned, Jinu questions whether this is even supposed to happen. The wind fairy looks at him in surprise, then becomes amazed at her own summoning. She's thrilled, swooning over the fact that someone managed to summon her after such a long time. Jinu is confused because summons aren't supposed to talk back, but then it clicks, and he asks if she might be Ramba. The question confuses her, and she quickly denies it, saying she's just a wind fairy. But as she floats there, she slowly recalls that only one person ever called her that, Jinu God. In that instant, realization hits her. Her face flushes as she recognizes him as her beloved Jinu God. With tears in her eyes, she clings to his face, crying about how much she missed him while hugging him tightly. Our hero begins to understand why an X rank was summoned in the first place. Back in the game, if you exploited the wind fairy's hidden mechanics, she could evolve into a powerful support summon that boosts attack speed. They had spent so much time together during his early days that he even gave her the nickname Ramba. At the same time, he still can't believe that this bug exists in the current version, since it was patched in year 1 of Battle of Summons. Jinu checks the official records, recalling how the exploit was supposedly fixed. He even remembers his frustration when she was deleted despite all his investment. Examining her data, he discovers that the wind fairy now has a strange quarantine status, something he doesn't fully understand. The fairy begins to cry, explaining that she was trapped in a cage and couldn't escape ever since she disappeared. She begs him not to leave her again, but our hero pushes her aside, trying to piece together a game theory. First, Jinu asks what caused her quarantine status. The question startles her, and although she tries to remember, a sudden headache stops her, as if something is preventing her from recalling the truth. She puts on a cutesy act, suggesting that some external force sealed her memories, but Jinu isn't buying it and tells her to just say what she can remember. Ramba admits she can't say much but confirms she was held in isolation and no normal player could summon her. What's more interesting is that Jinu senses there are other summons like her that were also quarantined. Ramba confirms this, though she never met them since they were kept separately. She estimates that at least 10 entities are part of this quarantine, which immediately gets Jinu thinking. His thoughts lead to a chilling conclusion. Back in the game, 10 of his summons were labeled as bugs and deleted under his care. If all of them were reclassified as X rank, then they might also be summonable. Ramba is simply happy that she managed to return to him through the scroll. Jinu theorizes that maybe these X rank summons only respond to his scrolls, which would mean he's the only person in the world capable of pulling X ranks so easily. He suspects this might be a hidden reward for clearing the 100th floor during his final run. To test his theory, he opens another scroll, wondering if every drop guarantees an X rank. The next summon appears, a gorilla. Unfortunately, his theory falls apart because this one is just a trash F rank, proving that X ranks are still based on RNG. Still, Jinu sticks to his original strategy. He just needs to farm summoning scrolls until he collects more X ranks. If he can reclaim all 10, he'll become even more overpowered than he was at his peak. Turning to Ramba, Jinu tells her to stop calling him Jinu God, because it sounds lame. More importantly, his name is already well known, and that kind of attention would only bring trouble. Right now, he lacks information and isn't prepared to deal with that. The moment people see him pulling X ranks, they'll start targeting him like there's a bounty on his head. Suddenly, a rumbling shakes the ground. Both of his summons panic. As the system prepares to move him forward, his first task appears. A beginner dungeon, a simple trial meant to get him started. Jinwoo feels a bit uneasy. He may have cleared thousands of dungeons in the game like a no-life, but this is real life now. It's a completely different situation. Taking a deep breath, he admits he's scared, but reminds himself that he won't be fighting directly, and that this is just a tutorial. With that reassurance, he steps forward as the system instructs him to head toward the entrance. Once inside, Jinwoo is slightly taken aback. The environment is far more eerie than he expected, and the dungeon confirms his entry, signaling the start. Following the tutorial, the system explains that dungeon battles use team-based summons, with up to 5 per side. Since he currently has 2, Wind Fairy and Gorilla, the system prompts him to assign them to his slots. Jinwoo reflects that the safest strategy is always entering with 5 summons. Going in with just 2 is risky but not impossible. After all, he's fought uneven battles thousands of times before. Knowing the mechanics inside and out, Jinwoo selects yes and assigns his summons. With both monsters ready, it's time to face the enemy. A low growl immediately puts him on edge. The opponent is a gray wolf and the objective is simple: defeat it to escape. First, Jinwoo assesses it as an F-class monster. Then a shield forms around him, protecting him in a honeycomb-like barrier just like in the game. But in reality, the stakes are far higher. Once that shield breaks, a single hit means instant death. No respawns, no second chances. Straight to the Shadow Realm. The wolf's intimidating aura doesn't help, even if it's only F rank. Jinwoo sends in his gorilla like a rocket, but the idiot just stands there roaring instead of attacking. It's so slow that even the wolf hesitates. Embarrassed, Jinwoo quickly orders the fairy to step in. Ramba uses her skill, Wind Pressure, boosting the gorilla's attack speed. With the buff applied, the gorilla suddenly moves with explosive force. Jinwoo is satisfied with the result. At the same time, the gray wolf charges forward to meet the attack. What worries Jinwoo is the wolf's size. It's much bigger than it should be. For the first time, he's unsure if his gorilla can win. This isn't a game anymore. Anything can happen. The clash begins as the wolf lunges first, biting into the gorilla and taking it down instantly, sending Jinwoo's stress through the roof. He yells at the fairy to do something, but she's already doing everything she can. With another boost, the gorilla surges forward and lands a powerful punch straight into the wolf's throat, knocking it back several feet. One last time, Ramba pours in her energy, pushing the gorilla to its limit. Empowered, the gorilla leaps and slams down with a devastating blow, tearing into the wolf's body. It follows up with a relentless barrage of punches, making sure the monster stays down. When it finally stops, Jinwoo and the fairy watch nervously. But in the end, Gorilla Boy stands victorious, having successfully eliminated the threat. It even roars in excitement as it celebrates. Our hero finally feels relief after surviving his first dungeon and is rewarded with 2 strength runes. In the next scene, we shift to the city, where Jinwoo's younger sister Ajin is making bank, earning around 200,000. 3 years ago, she picked up a new profession as a rune farming player. In other words, she dives into low-level dungeons and sells runes like a merchant to players who need them. She took on this role after hard times hit their family following Jinwoo's disappearance, but luckily she managed to obtain a C-class summon with a rare 1% drop rate. Thanks to her shadow elf, she can safely farm runes and make money with ease. Ajin checks her phone and is surprised to see her brother calling out of nowhere. She asks if he's already discharged, while he immediately calls her a rune peddler to her face. The comment annoys her since it downplays her profession, and she quickly corrects him, telling him to call her a farming player instead. Our boy decides to play along and asks her where the synthesis center is located. Ajin explains that it's in the player zone, just as expected. Ever since the Tower of Trials manifested in the real world, people had to establish special areas for game-related activities. That's how the player zone came to exist. It houses synthesis and enhancement centers, all conveniently built near the tower. In the next scene, Ajin sits across from her brother at a table, explaining that real-world locations like Jamsil and Hyundai have essentially become towers of trials. So far, Korea only has those 2, but the player zone he's looking for is located around them. Jinwoo realizes it makes sense to place player facilities close to the towers. More importantly, Ajin becomes curious about what rank he obtained. Keeping things simple, he tells her he only got E and F rank summons, which excites her since even E ranks have about a 5% drop rate. Our boy stays casual, not revealing that he actually hit the jackpot. Still, he asks for her help since he wants to adapt to the system as quickly as possible. In return, he offers her some pocket money, even though Ajin admits she earns far more than him. Teasing her, he jokes that he might become the world's greatest player through some twist of fate. Ajin doesn't buy into his delusion, believing that players like Rachel or Xenos are untouchable, basically gods from another level. Jinwoo, however, takes it as a challenge and simply asks her to show him the player zone so he can see it for himself. As they walk, Ajin learns that he summoned a wind fairy, which she finds strange since she's never heard of that type before. Curious, she asks him to show it, but he refuses, which offends her because they're supposed to be siblings. Jinwoo instead asks her to show her summon first, and Ajin confidently agrees, telling him not to be too shocked. Honestly, he's curious what kind of summon gives her this much confidence. The answer is a C-rank shadow elf, and his face instantly turns blank. It's not even anything special in his eyes, which annoys Ajin since she believes summons like this are considered elite among players. Deep down though, Jinu sees C ranks as nothing more than fodder, units he wouldn't even bring into a dungeon. He politely greets the elf and even asks if it can speak Korean or say hello, but both Ajin and the summon stare at him like he's lost it. Ajin is completely confused by her brother's strange behavior, but in reality he's testing whether all summons can talk. It turns out this one can't. Ajin even points out that summons aren't supposed to speak, giving him a reality check after dealing with Ramba. Now it's his turn to show his summon, but he straight up ghosts her and refuses. Ajin feels betrayed, like she just got scammed by tech support, while Jinu avoids showing anything because Ramba can talk and would draw attention. She calls him a scumbag and chases after him. Later, Jinu arrives at the player zone, which feels like a completely different world. The Jamsil area looks drastically different since the towers appeared, with corporations tearing everything down. It makes sense. No one wants an amusement park next to a tower filled with danger. At the same time, Jinu finds the idea thrilling. Ajino reminds her clueless brother that dungeons make the area dangerous, so it's not a place for fun. While that's true, Jinu can't help but feel excited seeing things in real life that he only experienced in the game. He quickly spots the exchange zone, where players trade items like scrolls and runes. It brings back memories of his time in the game, especially when he used to spend alongside his whale-rich friend. Ajino also points out the information desk, suggesting he use it whenever he needs help beyond the basics. Since he's a beginner, she recommends enrolling in an academy near player headquarters. Jino reassures her that he'll be fine, believing he already has everything he needs. His focus is on growing stronger on his own within the zone. Ajin is still worried, but Jinu tells her to head home while he stays behind for a bit. She finds his behavior strange since his discharge, almost like he's a different person. Still, she convinces herself that he's just trying to work hard in his own way, and decides to keep an eye on him when needed. They say their goodbyes, and later Jinu finds a secluded area where no one will notice him. He immediately summons Ramba, who excitedly greets him at full volume. He quickly shuts her up, telling her to stay quiet. Confused, the fairy doesn't understand, but Jinu firmly instructs her never to speak out loud in the real world. He explains that their conversations would attract attention, so she's only allowed to talk inside dungeons. With that settled, Jinu shifts his focus to his next goal, earning money to fund dungeon raids. Checking his balance, he realizes he's completely broke, just like a typical gamer in real life. Reality hits hard when he sees he only has 12-1 to his name. The thought of going back to part-time jobs makes him miserable. While others might suggest asking his parents for help, he refuses. His mother already works 3 jobs just to support the family, and asking her for money would feel like disrespecting her efforts. Feeling useless, he accepts that he has to start from scratch. The reason Jinu became unbeatable in the game was because he never spent real money. He was completely free to play and still reach the top, which honestly sounds unreal. That mindset gives him hope that he can climb from zero again. Suddenly, his eyes widen when he sees a transfer of 500,000 points. Shocked, he checks the source and realizes it's from his mother, who sent him money knowing he would never ask for it himself. The gesture overwhelms him. This is the same woman who cared for him during his 3-year coma, enduring countless struggles. Truly the definition of a selfless parent. Jinu wipes his tears, grateful for her kindness, and swears to succeed no matter what to make his family proud. 3 lost years won't stop him. He's determined to use every second to rise again and gather the resources he needs for dungeon raids. That determination leads him to buy 3 more summoning scrolls. His first objective is to build a proper team. He pulls a slime mass and a horned butterfly, both F ranks, but his luck turns around with the 3rd summon, an E rank poison lizard. That's already a solid outcome, beating the odds twice in just 5 pulls. The poison lizard has decent abilities, though he absolutely hates using the slime mass and is forced to keep it for now. Honestly, it's got a face only a mother could love. With his team assembled, Jinu prepares to raid more dungeons and push their growth further. The system revolves around farming, hunting, and opening scrolls, and Jinu is more than ready to grind. If he can recover all of his X-rank summons, he'll have the power to crush every obstacle standing in his way. His main plan is to acquire and recollect the remaining X ranks. With the initial preparations finished, it's time for the real work. Jinu searches for a dungeon location. In the game, it was simple since he just had to tap a spot, but now he's curious about how the real system works. It surprises him to the point that he even startles himself and others. That's because he learns that having a summoned creature alone isn't enough to enter a dungeon. Gates appear all over the country regardless of location, and difficulty is measured through energy emissions for ranking. But no matter how easy a dungeon is, people can't just enter freely unless they are officially registered. Our boy sulks because he has the worst luck imaginable. The fact that he awakened after this law was implemented hits him even harder. His little fairy is currently his only comfort since she supports him. Feeling slightly better, Jinu pats her head before suddenly receiving a call from his sister. Ajin asks when he's coming home for dinner, but he tells her he'll eat on his own. He then asks about the player registration process, which she conveniently forgot to mention. Jinu already knows she didn't bring it up, but in reality, the regulation is recent. Too many people were dying inside dungeons, forcing the government to introduce strict policies. The situation became so chaotic that agents now hover around every gate to verify entries and prevent new incidents. Jinwoo realizes how slow and tedious the process is, but it also makes him wonder if it's intentionally designed to control players. If everyone became a player chasing wealth, the entire social system could collapse. On top of that, there's also a ranking system that lists players locally and globally. Korea is so low-ranked that it doesn't even appear on the international board. Jin feels disappointed, thinking that if Jinwoo God were around, they would rank higher. Completely unaware that she's talking about her own brother, the legendary player. The call ends, and Jinwoo decides to rest for the day. The next morning at home, food is ready. Jinwoo is already preparing to leave at 6 a.m. His mother tells him to at least take a rice ball, but he insists he's fine. He quickly puts on his shoes and apologizes to his parents for only showing them his worst side, even thanking them sincerely for everything they've done. The parents are left completely shocked, his father flustered, his mother worried. The government has tightened safety protocols, and Jinwoo checks his phone, learning that countless deaths occurred due to player recklessness. He can't say much either, since he himself was a gaming addict for the past 10 years. It's not something he's proud of. At the reception, he submits his application form and asks how many people actually passed the qualification. He learns there's a final test, which annoys him because 1,000 people are already waiting behind him. Still, he thinks that if he can't pass something this basic, then what's the point of being one of the 5 emperors of the heavens? In the next scene, we move to a different location. Park Chang, affiliated with HQ, is disappointed with the talent this year. Suddenly, the building is attacked and chaos erupts. A man invades using a giant orc summon, seeking revenge against Chang for killing his brothers. Meanwhile, Chang believes the attacker is a psychopath and summons his own monsters, mostly fire and wood-based creatures. The HQ is under attack, and while everyone panics, our boy remains calm until he realizes he's been dragged into something far bigger than expected. The bystanders panic and place their hopes in Chang. Jinwoo senses a gang-related conflict. Noticing the attacker in a sharp suit clearly has a vendetta. What shocks him is how even real-world criminals now use advanced summons. Chang shouts for an emergency and orders everyone to summon shields. Jinwoo does the same, while Ramba almost speaks again before he quickly shuts her up, reminding her to stay silent in public. The orc charges in and the battle begins. Chang's fiery butterfly unleashes small meteors, but the orc tanks every hit, growing more aggressive. Chang starts getting pushed back, and Jinwoo realizes the situation is worse than expected. If he intervenes, he'll be dragged into the conflict too. His goal was only to observe, but now he's forced to decide. As the orc brings down its axe on one of Chang's summons, Jinwoo steps forward. Chang tells him to stay back, but Jinwoo instead analyzes the situation and points out a crucial mistake. The orc has a fire resistance buff that activates at specific timings, making fire attacks ineffective unless timed correctly. Chang observes carefully and confirms the glowing effect on the orc's body. Taking advantage of this, he adjusts his strategy. He commands his flame turtle to prepare another fire spell and fires it at the correct moment. This time, the attack lands perfectly. Chang celebrates as the weakness is finally exposed. The wood-type summon destroys the enemy's support creatures, leaving the attacker exposed. Then the flame turtle and flame butterfly combine attacks, overwhelming the orc completely. Soon, all enemy summons are wiped out and the attacker's shield breaks. Now cornered, the man attempts to surrender, bracing for the consequences, but a vine creature quickly restrains him, ignoring his pleas. Chang coldly declares that gang members are to be executed on sight. The criminal cries and begs, but it's too late. With a snap of Chang's fingers, the man is brutally killed, his body reduced to nothing. The fight ends. The crowd cheers for Chang's victory, praising him loudly, but Jinwoo is horrified. Everyone is completely unfazed that a man was just killed in front of them. That moment makes him realize the world he knew has already changed. Survival will require far more resolve than he expected. Chang approaches Jinwoo and thanks him sincerely for his earlier help, saying it allowed him to eliminate the terrorist. Grateful, he offers a reward. Using this opportunity, Jinwoo reveals that he hasn't registered at headquarters yet. The man is completely stunned by this information because this is the same kid who just gave him excellent combat advice while still being a total beginner. Chang asks for his ID card, assuring him that it's all they need for verification. Jinwoo hands it over, and Chang promises that a reward will be given after a quick background check. Satisfied, our boy leaves, while Chang quietly watches him go and immediately contacts a friend, forwarding some data. He wants a full investigation into Jinwoo's background. In the next scene, our boy hands a pastry to the fairy for staying quiet, and she happily eats it. Even though Jinwoo understands that players usually struggle with their summons, he finds it surprisingly easy to keep her satisfied with something this simple. Still, something about all this is bothering him. Even though he didn't plan to get involved, everyone inside that building would have died if he hadn't stepped in. The world is different now, and he can't fully adapt to it yet. Jinwoo knows he has to keep climbing by hunting stronger targets. Summoning scrolls are essential for him, especially if he wants to recover the remaining X-rank beasts. His priority list includes the drill instructor and the explosion dragon mage. Luckily, both can still be obtained from low-rank scrolls. With that in mind, Jinwoo decides it's time to make his next move. Later, Chang's report comes in, and it completely shocks him. The new kid was hospitalized for 3 years. which explains why he was unregistered. That also lines up with the timeline when the world changed. However, what he can't understand is how quickly the kid decided to pursue registration right after being discharged. Looking over the file again, Chang has to question if what he's seeing is real. Trying to stay composed, he personally calls the examiner and replaces them, deciding to oversee the test himself. Something about Jinu's adaptability is too unusual to ignore. To Chang, this feels like watching a miracle in motion. Meanwhile, Jinu arrives at the waiting area with a visibly disappointed expression. There are too many people, and as an introvert, he's already overwhelmed. Everyone is here for training and certification, meaning passing this stage will take time. Still, Jinu remains calm, sitting quietly and acting like he's already above it all. Soon the examiner appears, and it turns out to be Park Chang-suk himself. The first part of the test is a written assessment. Later, when Jinu meets Chang directly, the man mentions he didn't expect to see him here so soon. Chang calls it fate and asks about his training progress. Jinu, however, remembers it differently. Earlier, during a lecture, he was bored while sitting with Ramba. They were even teaching one of his old game combinations, which he found unimpressive in real time. Chang then brings up the reward application and says he has one more question before proceeding. The question surprises Jinu. It's whether he's a gamer. Jinu is stunned. Apparently, gamers is now an official term used for people who played Battle of Summons in the past. Around 70% of rankers fall into that category. Chang assumes this because Jinu was casually talking about buffs like an experienced player. Jinu confirms it, which immediately changes Chang's expression. He asks about his experience, but Jinu doesn't want to admit the full 10 years, so he simply says 1 year. That alone shocks Chang. Most rankers couldn't even last half a year, so hearing 1 year makes him visibly impressed. Meanwhile, Jinu is confused by his reaction. Chang then presents the rewards. Jinu is given 2 choices. One is instant player registration along with a possible HQ position, and the other is a cash reward of 5 million won. Chang clearly expects him to choose registration since it's objectively better, but Jinu instantly chooses the money instead. That decision shocks everyone. Turning down both registration and a job offer makes no sense to Chang, but Jinu doesn't care. He believes he can register on his own and has no intention of joining HQ. His priority is summons. Later in the player zone, a staff member recognizes him and explains the practical exam rules. He must clear a dungeon, specifically the Tuesday dungeon, and faster completion means a higher grade. Chang observes from afar, still stunned by the rejection. Even more surprising is Jinu's exam sheet. He wrote so much about runes and summons that the examiners were genuinely impressed. Some even believe he will become a ranker soon. With explanations finished, Jinu is allowed to enter the gate. Inside, a shield forms around him as the dungeon begins. The environment is filled with toxic slime monsters, and the objective is simple: defeat them and escape quickly. Jinu activates Ramba's buff ability, boosting his summons, especially the gorilla's attack speed. The dungeon is structured like a maze, and most players get lost trying to reach the boss. However, Jinu recognizes the optimal route immediately. The slimes are slow, so the best strategy is to rush straight to the boss. Following his instincts, he and his summons take the shortcut. But then red warning screens appear. The boss has spawned earlier than expected. A massive slime towers over him. Without hesitation, Jinu sends Gorilla forward. The gorilla leaps and slams down with crushing force, powered by Ramba's buff. The impact obliterates the slime in a single hit. What follows is a barrage of punches, reducing the monster into nothing but paste. Even F-rank enemies suddenly look dangerous under this power. Jinu becomes more excited as he realizes how strong his summons can become. Within moments, the boss is defeated, and the dungeon is cleared in 5 minutes. For Jinu, this still feels slow compared to his old game records, where he cleared dungeons in under a minute. Shockingly, this performance breaks the Korean record, unlocking an achievement. Jinu is stunned, but he receives 3 advanced summoning scrolls and 2 abrasives as a reward. What confuses him most is that this best record is still only 5 minutes. Meanwhile, HQ is in chaos, trying to process the new record. At first, they assume it's Kang Gyeon, but they quickly realize it's someone unknown. Jinu, a name that doesn't even appear on the ranker list. Yes, a non-ranker has broken the record, the #1 record at that. A formal meeting is immediately called to discuss the achievement. Everyone is impressed, but Chang is the most hyped of all, practically convinced the kid is a generational talent. In other words, he wants to secure him no matter what, or at least prevent any other country from taking him, for the sake of national survival. Chang strongly recommends that they register him as a player immediately, since time attack records are divided into national and global rankings. The previous Korean record was 6 minutes, while Rachel holds the global record at 2.5 minutes, and now Jinu has completely shattered the Korean record on his very first attempt. Because of that, Chang believes a normal evaluation is pointless. Someone like this deserves special treatment. Back to Jinu, he's actually a bit disappointed with how average his record feels. Chang suddenly rushes over, calling his name with an almost overly excited energy, praising his performance. He asks how Jinu managed to do it, but Jinu keeps it simple and doesn't explain much, thinking the praise is exaggerated. Then Chang hands him his official player license card. Jinu is surprised he got registered so easily without any real trial. However, Chang is still curious about his method. Jinu hesitates because revealing it could change everything. Korea's ranking, his personal freedom, and his safety. The upside is fame and money, but the downside is becoming a target or even getting controlled for information. Since the risk is too high, he avoids answering and instead calls out Chang for being too forward. Chang takes the refusal seriously, but also understands that this kind of gamer strategy is personal. He also admits that Korea urgently needs talent like Jinu. From this interaction, Jinu realizes Chang isn't a bad guy, he actually follows through properly and listens. That makes him consider whether using the country system could actually help him grow faster if timed correctly. He then asks to move somewhere quiet. In the next scene, Chang is practically pleading with him, emphasizing how much the headquarters needs his help, especially knowing he was just in a coma for 3 years. Chang apologizes again for the background check, explaining that unregistered skilled individuals often turn out to be criminals or gang-related players. Jinu feels slightly annoyed, thinking there's no point in investigating him further anyway. Chang agrees, but also notices something unusual. Most people feel pressured when national support is mentioned, but Jinu remains completely calm as if he fully understands his own value. While casually sipping coffee, Jinu asks what exactly the country can offer him. Chang quickly responds that he can provide full cooperation, though it sounds vague. He explains that as an assemblyman, his position is tied to public elections, meaning strong results could increase his authority. In short, he's a politician looking for leverage. He then asks Jinu to support him so he can in return provide full assistance. But the offer feels underwhelming to Jinu since there's no clear personal reward. Still, he agrees under one condition, a 1-month trial period. During that time, he'll focus on his own growth and decide later if cooperation is worth continuing. If not, he'll walk away and return everything. Chang interprets this as a trial partnership. It's bold, but it's his only chance to secure Jinu. They shake hands, both sides agreeing to the temporary deal. Jinu adds another condition. He wants confirmation that news of his record won't spread across the country since he's concerned about safety. Chang initially says HQ can handle his protection, but quickly realizes even they may not be enough for someone like Jinu, especially given how easily he handled the dungeon. So he accepts the condition, though he admits total information control isn't possible. They part ways on that note. Jinu leaves satisfied and immediately checks his rewards, especially the advanced summoning scrolls. He knows record-breaking rewards are valuable, and although opening them sounds tempting, gambling isn't his priority. Selling them seems smarter. Then he remembers the player web system where all player data and trading listings exist. After installing and checking it, he's shocked each high-grade scroll is worth around 3 million won. That means he almost made 10 million won from a single dungeon run. Jinu quickly realizes his financial situation might change much faster than expected. He plans to sell the high-grade scrolls and reinvest into low-grade ones, focusing only on the summons he needs most. However, when he checks low-rank scroll prices, he's confused. They're listed at 5,000 won each despite being easy to farm. The market is flooded with sellers, yet prices remain fixed. Realizing he needs more information, he calls his sister Ajin again. After explaining the situation, she tells him the HQ buys scrolls in bulk to support rankers. That's why the minimum price stays at 5,000 won. However, she adds that the system might change soon since it was created during the early era and HQ no longer needs as many scrolls. That information immediately gives Jinu an idea. He hangs up and decides to meet Chang again the next day. Chang is happy to see him and asks what he needs. Jinu requests large quantities of low-level scrolls instead of high-grade ones, which surprises him. Most players want the opposite. Jinu asks for as many as possible, and Chang explains that HQ processes around 50,000 low-grade scrolls daily, meaning supply is not an issue. He briefly worries Jinu might be trying to resell them, but Jinu clarifies there's no point since the market is already saturated. Chang becomes even more intrigued by his thinking. Jinu isn't acting like a normal player, his strategy is completely different. Still, Chang agrees, but he has one condition of his own. All he wants in return is a single piece of information that could benefit HQ given his position and responsibilities. If he gets caught supporting him behind the scenes, public trust in him will collapse. So if Jinu can provide useful information, it has to be treated as a formal business transaction instead. In other words, our boy realizes nothing is being handed to him for free, which is fine since he doesn't want favors anyway. He agrees to the deal and starts explaining the concept of shaving seconds off achievement records. Normally, clearing a dungeon in first place grants 3 high-grade scrolls as a reward, but the same reward can be obtained again if another player breaks that record. In short, players can repeatedly beat the record by even 1 second, effectively resetting it and farming rewards over and over. This turns time attacks into a system for stacking scrolls. On top of that, it benefits the Korean Association as a whole, since stronger players improve national rankings. Chang admits they've already experimented with the idea, but most players haven't properly used it yet, so there's still room to apply it. Next, Jinu brings up another strategy, this time for the Tuesday dungeon he cleared. Chang listens closely, practically waiting like an excited puppy, thinking he's about to hear some top-tier secret technique. Jinu explains that with this method, most players could clear the dungeon in under 3 minutes. But before sharing more, he ensures the information is worth the price. He increases his demand, adding 50 more high-grade scrolls on top of the low-grade ones. In total, he's effectively asking for around 100 million won worth of scrolls. It's an insane price, but Jinwoo considers it fair since the strategy can be applied across both low and high-tier dungeons, potentially generating billions in return. Chang agrees, stating that if the information proves valuable, he'll transfer 150 million won directly and also supply 10,000 low-rank scrolls daily. The next evening, Chang gathers his staff for a test. Everyone is expecting something significant. He begins by mentioning the recent Tuesday dungeon record, then casually claims he obtained a method to bypass it through overseas connections. He even frames Jinwoo as a test subject who unknowingly contributed to the discovery, warning them not to spread any details. The purpose of the meeting is simple. They will begin time attack testing using this new method. The key summon involved is the poison lizard. The poison lizard is roughly human-sized, classified as a brawler-type summon, tough and durable. However, it's unpopular due to how difficult it is to raise compared to other summons. Most players overlook it, except for one crucial trait. Its diet consists mainly of slimes. That single detail makes it perfect for the Tuesday dungeon. With it, fast clears become possible. In the next scene, players proudly report 4-minute completion times, confirming the method works. The once ignored poison lizard is suddenly celebrated as an essential summon. A few days later, news of the record spreads across the country. Chang fully realizes Jinwoo is far beyond an ordinary gamer. He decides to form a dedicated support team around him, selecting 3 skilled members with different specialties. Meanwhile, Jinwoo stares at his bank account, completely stunned by how rich he suddenly feels. He wonders why he never earned money like this before. But what excites him most is the 10,000 summoning scrolls he now has access to. Since Chang kept his promise, Jinwoo prepares to hold up his end of the deal. He sets up Ramba for another attempt. Water is poured onto the ground, and the Wind Fairy begins praying to every god she can think of, begging for an X-rank summon. Then the scrolls are opened, one after another. Thousands of summons are revealed, but most are junk. After opening 3,600 scrolls, Jinwoo is left exhausted with nothing valuable obtained. The fairy tells him it's unrealistic to expect an X rank so easily. She explains that summoning her was pure luck, basically god-tier RNG. In reality, even 100,000 low-rank scrolls might not guarantee an X-rank summon. Confused, Jinwoo asks if she understands the system properly. She explains that summons are tied to roughly 10% of the global population, meaning hundreds of millions of possible entities exist. X-rank summons, however, are isolated and unique. This shocks Jinwoo, though he's more focused on the fact that pulling one X-rank out of hundreds of millions is basically lottery-tier difficulty. Ramba adds that he is likely the only person in the world capable of summoning X-ranks, but Jinwoo just sulks, realizing how impossible the odds really are. She also mentions that some summon groups have already been fully removed from circulation, making them unsummonable forever. Still, the odds remain brutal. Jinwoo briefly considers switching strategies to mid-tier scrolls, but that brings new problems: cost, efficiency, and scarcity. In the end, he realizes he has no choice but to work within the current system. He opens another scroll with Ramba assisting him. 2 weeks pass. After opening around 140,000 scrolls, he still hasn't obtained a single X rank. During this time, he even moves closer to the player zone for convenience, refusing to rely too heavily on his parents. At the synthesis center, Jinwoo notes how much the building has changed along with the rest of the world. What used to be a famous hotel buffet is now a system facility. He holds ticket number 125 while Ramba nervously tells him not to mess up. Inside, he registers Ramba into the synthesis system and begins upgrading her by sacrificing multiple summons as materials. Her level increases to 21 along with improved intelligence. Ramba celebrates her growth excitedly, but Jinwoo remains unimpressed. This result came after 140,000 scrolls, and the maximum level is 100. At this rate, he feels like he'll die before ever reaching the peak. More days pass, and Chang checks on progress reports. His team is fully established, and his focus shifts entirely toward Jinwoo. He learns that Jinwoo continues opening scrolls non-stop every single day. Even today, he purchased more using the 150 million won, still trying to get them at lower prices whenever possible. Unfortunately, the Management Bureau is already growing suspicious and raising concerns about the supply of these scrolls. Chang still can't understand why Jinwoo would invest so heavily in something like this, but he's certain the kid knows something they don't. Because of that, he agrees to the ridiculous proposal of selling each scroll at half price. The suggestion shocks his subordinate, who immediately warns that it will cause major problems. But the assemblyman remains calm, believing the talent they're dealing with is destined to become a national hero. In his mind, supporting Jinwoo now means he will later be credited as the one who invested in him early. That's why he considers this decision worth it. He also tells Byungjin to keep everything confidential, limiting knowledge of the deal to himself, Jiao, and Tai Seo. Meanwhile, we return to Jinwoo, who is once again suffering through thousands of scroll openings. He's visibly drained, and even the Wind Fairy is starting to question how long this is going to continue. To ease the situation, a new figure arrives, Yu Jia, a stunning member of his new support team. She informs him she's here regarding the proposal. Jinwoo asks about the discount arrangement, and she carefully explains that they will be providing him a 50% discount on scroll purchases. The news leaves him completely stunned. On top of that, she mentions an additional 100 million won budget allocation as part of his operational support. For Jinwoo, it feels like everything is suddenly leveling up to another dimension of luxury. Jia reminds him not to leak any of this information, though she assumes he wouldn't anyway. She also mentions it's meant to strengthen their working relationship, something Jinwoo has no complaints about. After she leaves, Jinwoo finally feels what real support from the assemblyman looks like. It pushes him to think even more seriously about pulling an X-rank summon as soon as possible to repay that trust. Back to grinding, he continues opening thousands more scrolls. Still nothing but F-rank trash. No progress at all. At this point, he's gone too far to stop. He starts praying desperately for the explosive dragon mage. And then finally, it happens. After what feels like endless suffering, the gacha gods respond. Both Jinwoo and Ramba are left speechless as the explosive dragon mage is successfully summoned. Jinwoo is overwhelmed with emotion, even tearing up, feeling like all his frustration has finally paid off. For a moment, it feels like he's reached the end of his struggle, but he doesn't stop. There's a phenomenon known as a momentum luck, where rare summons tend to appear back to back. Trusting this, he opens another scroll, and unbelievably, it works again. The drill instructor appears. Jinwoo is completely overwhelmed, crying tears of joy. After weeks of failure, he has finally obtained the exact summons he wanted. The drill instructor is an X-grade summon specialized in training and growth acceleration. While not a combat powerhouse himself, he dramatically boosts the strength development of other summons. He immediately recognizes Jinwoo and bows, acknowledging their bond. Ramba and the drill instructor also share a strange familiarity, as if they've all been connected before. Then the explosive dragon mage appears as well, confirming her identity. Jinwoo hears her voice for the first time, and she turns out to have terrifying offensive potential, especially when paired with proper training support. With the drill instructor's guidance, her damage scaling becomes absurd. Both summons acknowledge Jinwoo as their master and show genuine respect. He calmly orders them to stay silent in public. That night back at home, Jinwoo is completely drained. His summons are now interacting with each other freely, while the drill instructor immediately begins assessing their weaknesses. He declares that all of them are too weak and need intense training. He first instructs the explosive dragon mage to refine her mana control in preparation for unlocking higher abilities. Then he turns to Ramba, who instantly panics under his intense gaze. His training plan for her is brutal, starting with basic strength development. He gives her an absurd first task: lift and swing a frying pan 5,000 times. The fairy looks helplessly toward Jinwoo for support, but he's mentally gone at this point. Meanwhile, back at HQ, Geo reports a new issue. The director has officially stopped supplying scrolls and is demanding a full investigation into their usage. Chang is confused, wondering why the director suddenly cares about something like this. Geo suspects interference from Hisu, another assemblyman and Chang's political rival. If scroll supply stops, Jinwoo's growth will also be affected. Chang is frustrated but receives an unexpected call. Jinwoo himself, saying he no longer needs additional scrolls. Still, Chang remains wary of Hisu's interference and plans to deal with it later. Later, at Guanocon Mountain, Jinwoo prepares for his next dungeon. He wears a simple tracksuit and studies the area. In this world, there are several dungeon types: exploration dungeons for materials, Tower of Trials dungeons for high difficulty, and Chaos Dragon dungeons requiring full parties, though that last one hasn't fully manifested in reality yet. There are also rare stage dungeons, but those are uncommon. Despite recommendations to use a party, Jinwoo prefers going solo. A staff member checks his license, confirms his registration, and lets him proceed. Inside, Jinwoo is immediately met with chaos. A full-scale battle is underway. Humans versus monsters. This is a subjugation-type dungeon already in progress. Soldiers are barely holding the line as waves of orcs push forward. For a moment, it feels familiar to him, just like a game. But now that everything is real, he can feel every bit of the intense pressure in the air. What stands before him is no longer a simulation, but a full-scale war where soldiers desperately shout for healers to keep them alive. The boy decides to stay calm and quickly summons his units to deal with the orcs. He tells Ramba to boost the drill instructor's attack speed and orders the explosive dragon mage to provide cover, using her fire spells. At the same time, he commands the D-ranked Mini Kong to charge straight toward the orc boss, completely ignoring the chaos in between. His focus is entirely on the boss because of the simple structure of the orc subjugation dungeon. As long as the giant orc at the back is taken down, victory is guaranteed and the battle will end. Meanwhile, with Ramba's buff in effect, the drill instructor goes completely wild, cutting down orcs one after another as if they were mere insects. Watching this, Jinwoo begins to wonder if this overwhelming strength comes from being an X-rank. A small smile forms on his face as it becomes clear the battle might end before he even gets the chance to properly warm up. Even the soldiers who were struggling just moments ago are left stunned, seeing powerful allies appear out of nowhere and completely shift the tide of the fight. Mini Kong leaps straight into the orcs while the Golden Fairy continues healing without pause. Ramba, on the other hand, seems to be enjoying herself, provoking the monsters and making them throw their weapons at her. Seeing this, the boy immediately scolds her for messing around. Meanwhile, the explosive dragon mage unleashes her signature fire spell, burning every orc that comes into contact with her flames. Before long, through their teamwork, the boss finally falls, and a notification appears, confirming that the dungeon has been successfully cleared. All the summons celebrate their small victory as the system rewards them with experience points, allowing them to level up. On top of that, Jinnu hits the jackpot by receiving an intermediate summoning scroll, along with 500,000 won. These rewards push him to start looking for new dungeons right away, since he not only leveled up his summons but also earned easy cash in the process. He begins planning to make it big overnight, and finally stop being a broke loser. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, Assemblyman Chang is being scolded by Jia for making such a reckless bet. Apparently, he let his anger get the better of him and is now facing the consequences. During his earlier meeting with Hisu and the director, things escalated into an argument that nearly turned into a full-blown fight. The director tried to step in and stop the clash between Assemblyman Hisu and Chang. Hisu insisted he was only giving advice, but Chang clearly had no interest in hearing something that sounded more like an insult than help. Hisu then mocks him, calling him a loser since none of his talents have ever made it to the national team. That comment pushes Park Chang over the edge, and the argument quickly intensifies. Unfortunately for him, his rival actually has the skills to back up his words. Even so, Park refuses to let Hisu look down on him like that. Sensing that Park is about to lose control, Hisu proposes a bet to see whose talent can reach a higher rank, and Park immediately agrees without thinking it through. Hisu then raises the stakes, adding that the loser must publicly admit the other is better and resign from their position. To make sure neither of them backs out, he adds a penalty of 1 billion won. Instead of reconsidering, Park quickly agrees and even suggests drafting a proper contract for the bet. As the story shifts back, Jia questions him, asking if he made such a reckless decision just because of Jinyu. She admits the boy is a genius, but reminds him that, at the end of the day, he is still just a gamer who might fall short compared to registered rankers. The man, however, remains unfazed, stating that he fully believes in Jinyu and is confident the boy will bring massive returns if supported properly. Just then, an assistant rushes into the room and loudly announces that he has identified the person responsible for solo clearing D-rank dungeons. It turns out to be none other than Jinyu. Hearing this, the assemblyman is left speechless, his mouth hanging open. While Jia struggles to believe it, she argues that it has only been a month since the boy registered, and she cannot understand how he is already clearing dungeons in under 5 minutes. The assemblyman immediately takes advantage of the situation, switching his tone as he starts bragging about his instincts, claiming he always knew the boy was special. The excitement on his face is obvious as he begins looking forward to winning the ridiculous bet he made. Back at home, the boy lies on his bed, staring at his phone screen. He cannot help but giggle while checking his bank balance. The poor guy has never seen this much money in one place before. After farming D-rank dungeons non-stop, he managed to stack up a solid 16 million. The intermediate scrolls turned out to be his biggest source of income, earning him some seriously huge profits. He drops to his knees and basks in the reward of all that hard work, convincing himself he might actually be the chosen one. That is a bit conceited considering his summons did most of the work. Still, he decides to divide the money into different accounts for separate purposes. First, he sets aside funds for monthly expenses. Then he creates another account to share part of his earnings with his family and make them proud. Lastly, and most importantly, he sets aside 10 million, the same amount that got his name into the headlines, placing it into a savings account, strictly for personal use. The rest of his balance is reserved for himself. While you can never have enough wealth, Jinyu understands the importance of investing in his growth as a player. All of his summons are already above level 30. The next step in strengthening them is through powerful runes. It will not be easy, but grinding dungeons daily remains the most efficient method. Still, he wonders if buying a main summon from the black market might speed up his farming. Suddenly, his jaw drops when he sees how expensive C-rank summons are. A weak-looking Thunderbat still costs an eye-watering 20 million. That is not even the worst part. B-rank summons start in the hundreds of millions, and as for A or S rank, none are available at all. He sighs, realizing that B-rank summons are incredibly rare. Even so, it does not discourage him much. He always knew the day would come when he would need outside assistance. Back at the assemblyman's office, the man's calm and composed demeanor completely shatters when he hears some thrilling news. Another request has arrived from the star player, Jinyu. The moment he hears the name, he practically starts fangirling like a kid on sugar. He eagerly asks what the request is about, seriously frightening the poor staff member delivering the message. The assistant simply shows him the list, which contains every summon Jinyu wants to purchase. The total climbs past 1 billion won as if it were pocket change. The assemblyman's eyes nearly pop out of their sockets at the audacity. He lets out a dry laugh, wondering if the boy truly believes such an amount can be arranged overnight. However, his sarcasm fades when his subordinate adds one crucial detail. Jinyu has promised to reveal secret information about timed attacks in daily dungeons. That immediately grabs his full attention. He confirms whether the player truly means information for every single day of the week. It sounds far too generous, almost suspicious. Still, he chooses to trust Jinyu, and decides to bring the proposal to the director. A few hours later, he returns to the office, slamming his fist on the desk and looking like he might flip it at any moment. His team can already tell the meeting did not go well. The director rejected the proposal outright, even though it could have pushed their company to the top of the industry. Watching him fume, Jibber quietly thinks she wishes every manager had that much passion. When his subordinate asks what happened, the assemblyman explains that the director wants solid proof of Jinwoo clearing dungeons first. Their demand feels ridiculous since the player needs money to buy summons that will help him clear those dungeons. Jibber agrees that missing this opportunity would be a huge mistake. Seizing the moment, she calmly suggests that selling priceless dungeon intel for only $1 billion might actually be undervaluing it. Her lips curl into a confident smile as she offers a simple solution. She can cover the payment herself. Hearing this, Assemblyman Park recalls that Jia is not just an employee with bold opinions. She is the heir to the Daesung family group, someone who received the finest education and has collected achievements throughout her life. Unlike the rest of her family, however, she has always been more interested in players and dungeons than corporate affairs. And right now, the player who fascinates her the most is Jinwoo, the rookie who went from nobody to clearing dungeons as if it were a side hobby. Now that he is offering an exclusive deal, this feels like the perfect opportunity to recruit him into her own agency before anyone else can. The assemblyman's current position comes with countless restrictions, but this arrangement would give him full freedom over future profits. No need to beg for approval. Still, he hesitates and asks if she is truly comfortable betting such a massive sum on a player with an uncertain future. The high-class lady responds with a cheeky smile, asking if he even knows her current bank balance. She assures him money will not be an issue. All she needs is a single meeting with the player. After that, she is confident she will have him firmly in her grasp. Later that evening, she sits alone by the window of a fine dining restaurant. That is when her awaited client finally arrives. Looking sharp in a perfectly tailored two-piece suit, Jinwoo feels slightly surprised at how quickly the assemblyman agreed to the arrangement. From his perspective, all he did was request a formal meeting in exchange for a bit of secret information. It is his first time in such a luxurious place, one that makes even five-star hotels seem underwhelming. The line of waiters welcoming him at the entrance almost makes him feel like a true boss. Just then, a graceful voice calls out to him, leaving him completely speechless. He is stunned to finally meet the woman he has only ever seen on his phone. The Daesung company heiress truly has everything one could ask for. She is intelligent, beautiful, and backed by a powerful family. Honestly, name a trait and she probably has it. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that the genius constantly making headlines would be working with HQ. Curious why she is sitting alone, he asks if no one else will be joining them. She smiles softly and explains that she was the one who reached out to him, not Mr. Park. Soon, exquisite dishes are placed neatly in front of him, as Jia delivers the unfortunate news that HQ cannot afford to provide the resources he requested. Mr. Park did everything he could to persuade his higher-ups, but he was met with rejection after rejection. The boy remains completely calm, saying it is a shame they cannot help. He casually adds that he is confident he can climb to number 1 even without their support. However, she surprises him with a new proposal, sliding a drink toward him. She reveals that she plans to establish a management firm built specifically for him and him alone. He nearly chokes trying to process the generosity of the offer. In his eyes, it is an incredible deal. Owning a company would mean zero restrictions, driven purely by profit, which just happens to be his specialty. Still, that is not even his main motivation. This is also a golden opportunity to strike a deal with someone capable of buying his secret information at the highest price. Jia adds that she, along with the entire Daesung group, will unconditionally support him with whatever he needs. Within seconds, he is completely disarmed by her confidence. He bluntly admits that it is hard not to like her. She praises him in return, calling him a talent who deserves such treatment. She tells him they will discuss the finer details of his contract later. For now, she suggests he greet the summons he ordered. Jinwoo's jaw drops. She actually fulfilled his request before he even signed anything, almost as if she already knows he will not refuse. She flashes a smug smile and tells him to think of it as a gift of appreciation. The next day in the mountains, his little sister searches for him at their usual spot. He has not contacted her for an entire week, and on top of that, he suddenly moved out to live on his own. She is clearly annoyed when a gorgeous woman walks past her, leaving her speechless. She does a double take, feeling like she has seen that face somewhere on social media. Her brain struggles for a moment before it finally clicks. It is the national icon Jia, who seems to be looking for the same person. Nearby, the boy is breaking a sweat from intense morning drills. His summons look even worse, practically collapsing from exhaustion. Just then, they notice someone approaching. Jinwoo turns and spots Jia climbing the stairs, clearly not dressed for exercise. He is genuinely surprised to see her there. She calmly says she is impressed to find him training this hard so early in the morning. Together with his summons, he actually looks like he has formed a proper party. Then she offers him yet another token of appreciation. A screen suddenly appears before him, stating that Jior wishes to initiate a trade. A warning message pops up, advising him to carefully review the trade terms before accepting. The system exists to help players support one another, but if anyone attempts to scam the other party, there are serious consequences. The system literally strikes offenders with lightning as punishment, so honesty is strongly enforced. Right before his eyes, he sees Jior's entire collection of summons listed for transfer. In exchange, she asks for absolutely nothing. Without hesitation, he presses accept, and just like that, her entire collection becomes his. Immediately after, he bows to her repeatedly. This gift is far beyond anything he believes he deserves. she brushes it off, saying it is not a big deal, and suggests they move on to the actual contract. She has already decided on the company name, a combination of their surnames. The profit distribution is just as generous. Jinwoo will receive 70%, she will take 25%, and the remaining 5% will go to Mr. Park. The poor man deserves a comfortable retirement someday. Of course, it is not charity. Park will continue supporting them from his position inside HQ. As for the paperwork, she has already arranged for an assistant to handle everything. Jinwoo raises an eyebrow, pointing out that those assistants were employed by HQ. She casually informs him that they have already resigned. Apparently, offering triple their previous salary is a very effective motivator. Moving on, he wonders if she is truly fine with giving him 70%. She calmly assures him it is not generosity but a calculated decision that reflects her confidence in his potential. What she does not say out loud is that money is not her real goal. Her true intention is to win Jinwoo completely to her side. Without hesitation, the boy presses his thumbprint onto the contract, sealing the deal as the two of them shake hands. Just then, one of his summons notices movement in the forest. In the blink of an eye, it disappears into the bushes. Moments later, violent screams echo through the trees. Shortly after, it returns, dragging two familiar figures like pieces of meat from a butcher shop. Completely confused, Jinwoo stares at his little sister, Ajin, and asks why she was sneaking around in the bushes. He pieces together her story and realizes she recognized Jinwoo as a celebrity she admired, which led her to follow her without thinking. She quickly tries to reframe the situation, claiming she was just curious at the time. By then, Jiao had already left, so Jinwoo presses further, pointing out that it still counts as stalking. He asks if she decided to watch them from a distance after seeing him with Jiao. His sister falls silent after being exposed. After a brief pause, she finally admits the truth without resistance. Right after that, she jumps toward him and demands to know how he even knows Jiao and how he managed to meet someone like her. Jinwoo explains that his contract includes a clause requiring him to introduce his family to Miss Jiao. He adds that she had planned to meet them formally anyway. His sister immediately begins to swoon at the thought of meeting her idol with the family. Before he can continue, she cuts him off again, pressing for more details. He begins explaining that he used to be a well-known gamer who once held the record for clearing low-rank dungeons faster than anyone else. Because of that, he frequently visited headquarters and eventually met Jia by chance. She asks if it is the same game he used to play on his phone all the time. Jinwoo panics at the risk of exposing his identity as Jinwoo God. He quickly claims it was a different game and that he only played for about a year. His sister catches the hint and remarks that it still sounds impressive, even if the game itself was trash. She then teases him, asking if all that time he wasted on games has finally paid off. Deep down, Jinwoo knows he can trust the family that has taken care of him for the past 3 years, but he still refuses to put them in danger. He decides he will only reveal everything once he is strong enough to protect them completely. Ajin points out that he kept this information from her all this time, but Jinwoo replies that he always intended to tell her eventually. He asked her to keep it a secret for now until he personally explains everything to their parents. She struggles to believe what she just heard, but Jinwoo insists he has his reasons for staying silent. Eventually, she agrees despite her doubts. In the background, Ramba can no longer handle the weight of the dragon mage and finally collapses under the strain. At the same time, the drill instructor corners her shadow elf, making it visibly anxious. Jinwoo quickly tells Ajin to pair the shadow elf with a shadow wolf, explaining that without the wolf, its efficiency drops to less than 10% of its full potential. She is surprised to hear that, especially since the summon is completely new to her. Jinwoo explains that it makes sense because the summon belongs to the B-rank tier. Curious, she wonders how she could possibly obtain a B-rank summon and immediately searches the online catalog for answers. In the next moment, her expression falls into despair as she shows him the price, asking how he expects her to afford something that costs 500 million. She sarcastically remarks that at this rate she might be able to buy it in 20 years. However, her brother calmly replies that he can get it for her within a month without much trouble. She bursts into laughter at the claim and mocks him for trying to act cool just because he has recently gained some recognition as a gamer. She tells him to forget about it and insists that she will save up little by little until she can afford it on her own someday. He simply smiles, stands up, and tells her not to cry when he actually makes it happen, which only leaves her more confused. She begins to feel that her brother has changed into a completely different person lately, while her frightened elf quietly snuggles into her lap for comfort. About a week later, outside one of the weekday dungeons, Jinwoo meets up with the company team as planned. They hand him a set of new gear, which confuses him at first since he did not expect anything like that. Jisa explains that for the Ubox company, information is their most valuable asset above everything else. She tells him that they sell high-definition recordings of dungeon runs at premium prices, and the special gear exists to capture everything during the process. She continues by explaining that the equipment records the surroundings in full 3-dimensional detail while remaining lightweight enough to wear comfortably. As soon as he puts it on, the assistant activates the system, and it begins recording everything around him like a set of prying eyes. Jinwoo feels slightly embarrassed, saying this might be the most awkward situation he has ever experienced. He adds that he has never attempted a Monday dungeon before, so the run might not look very clean. Jinwoo reassures him that they will simply edit the best parts together afterward. He thanks her and casually asks if it would be fine for him to break the national record the moment he enters the dungeon. This completely startles her, and she stares at him in disbelief before giving a hesitant approval. She wonders if he is joking and tells him to stay relaxed and perform naturally based on his instincts as a gamer instead. After entering the dungeon, he recalls that the current Korean record sits at around 7 minutes. He immediately concludes that surpassing it will be easy. He remembers that this dungeon uniquely drops attack-related runes, making clear time directly tied to ranking performance. Just like in other games, attack runes play a crucial role in the boss system, and without them, progression becomes nearly impossible. In addition, the dungeon operates as a defense-type scenario where surviving for 30 minutes guarantees a clear. However, completion time still matters, so if he manages to defeat the final boss, known as the Lich, the dungeon ends instantly. Because of that, eliminating the boss has become the primary strategy for top players aiming for fast clears. He checks his equipment and opens his interface, which displays options to organize 3 different teams for battle. Jinwoo has already prepared everything in advance, so he quickly loads a preset configuration without wasting any time. For his first team, he summons the training instructor, the combat aide, and Mini Kong, while for the second team, he selects the Priest of Radiance along with the Golden Fairy. His status screen updates, showing that the Horde of the Lich has begun its approach and that he must hold out for 30 minutes under pressure. The timer starts immediately, and Mini Kong charges forward in a frenzy, tearing through the incoming skeletons without restraint. Jinwoo signals his summons to push forward and carve a path toward victory. As the Horde advances, he orders them to move toward higher ground without delay. The training instructor Hung looks surprised at first but follows the command, realizing that everything is being recorded. Jinwoo estimates that it will take at least 2 minutes to reach the higher position, and during that time, he trusts Mini Kong and Hung to handle the incoming enemies. Once they arrive, he instructs his combat aide to take position and prepare for the next phase. He recalls that in the game, the combat aide has long range and exceptional accuracy, making it useful in specific situations. However, in reality, its damage output is extremely low, to the point where it cannot even defeat a standard monster after hours of continuous attacks. Even so, in this low-rank Monday dungeon, the aide becomes the perfect summon because the Lich has relatively low health overall. He tells the aide to hold fire for now, and then orders Radiance to cast a blessing over the battlefield. He explains that this blessing removes the Lich's dark shield, which normally grants immunity against long-range attacks. Once the shield disappears, he commands the combat aide to begin firing immediately. While Mini Kong and Hung maintain control of the advancing horde, Radiance and Murmury provide support from above. The aide fires its shot, and as expected, the damage appears underwhelming compared to the other summons. However, the key detail is that the Lich's health steadily decreases with each precise hit. After several successful shots, the Lich begins to weaken, and Jinwoo notes that with normal runes, this process would have taken far too long. That is why most players avoid bringing the combat aide into this dungeon. At that moment, a skeleton slips past Kong and rushes toward Jinwoo, but Hung intercepts it instantly and eliminates it without hesitation. Jinwoo then points out that he holds a major advantage because he can combine runes with Hung's abilities to unlock the combat aide's full potential. With that enhancement, even a top-tier Lich can fall from a single decisive strike. The next shot fires, and the Lich suddenly falters as its condition worsens rapidly before collapsing backward. The system screen updates, confirming that the boss has been defeated, and the dungeon has been cleared in 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The entire squad exhales in relief, as the results screen reveals that they have broken Korea's all-time record and unlocked a special achievement. Meanwhile, Jiao wonders if he truly intended to attempt a time attack on his very first run, feeling that it might have been too ambitious. She quietly notes that it has only been a week since he obtained his summons, and they would have supported him regardless, even if he failed. The assistant grows anxious and asks if she really believes that Jinwoo can break every record without exception. He continues, saying that while breaking the Tuesday record is impressive, they never discussed how he plans to clear the remaining dungeons ahead. He points out that Jinwoo is not the first player in Korea with a year of experience, and questions whether he has been completely honest from the start. Jinwoo cuts him off and asks if he is worried about the situation, which immediately softens his expression. She looks back at him and tells him not to stress about the investment, since she used her personal funds anyway. She adds that even in the worst-case scenario, she will ensure their careers remain secure without any damage. On top of that, she reassures them that their salaries will remain unchanged, which causes both of them to tear up in relief. Jael reflects quietly, reminding herself that she has more than enough resources to handle any outcome that may come from this decision. At the same time, she cannot shake the feeling that Jael is hiding something far greater beneath the surface. The confidence he displayed before entering the dungeon made it clear that the challenge meant almost nothing to him from the very beginning. Just then, news arrives confirming that the record has officially been broken, sending shockwaves through everyone involved. The information quickly reaches HQ, where they realize that the low-rank Monday dungeon record has been shattered by an unbelievable margin of 3 minutes. They immediately look up the player responsible and discover that it is none other than Jinwoo, leaving them completely stunned. Back at the dungeon entrance, Jia's hands tremble as she begins to grasp the full weight of what just happened. In her mind, the business will perform decently at worst, but if everything goes right, it could grow into something far beyond expectations. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, our boy looks at the magnificent scene before him, reflecting briefly. As he stares at the portal, he remembers that there is something else he needs to do first. He switches off the recording device and summons the system panel, telling himself that it is finally time for some intense grinding. In the game, after clearing a weekday dungeon, players unlock a feature known as Auto Battle. As the name suggests, as long as your summons handle the grinding, you can continue collecting rewards effortlessly. Returning to the present, he sends the drill instructor back into his inventory and summons Ramba instead, placing her in charge of the grinding session. This surprises her, but Jinu explains that he is not using Hung because he wants him to train the others. He teasingly asks if she would prefer to train as well, which makes her freeze instantly. The poor fairy is thrown into a flashback of her brutal training under the ruthless instructor, who pushed her beyond her limits. Remembering that traumatic experience, she nearly breaks into tears and begs him to let her focus on grinding instead. With that settled, he forms a plan to clear all the weekday dungeons first, and then maximize profits using the auto battle system. This approach has an added benefit, as the summons will continue leveling up while grinding, making the process extremely efficient. With everything decided, he takes his leave while the Wind Fairy happily waves him off, relieved that she has escaped further torture. As soon as he steps through the portal, he is greeted by an unexpected sight. His team members have rolled out a red carpet, treating him like a celebrity. Trying not to overthink it, he hands over the equipment and asks Jia if that will be all. She assures him that they will do everything possible to keep his identity from leaking. To her surprise, Jinu says that he no longer cares about that. Instead, he looks her directly in the eye and asks her to prioritize protecting his family. He points out that Korea's gangs are both powerful and dangerous, but if their focus remains solely on him, they can provide better protection. Jinu pauses for a few seconds before agreeing, promising to use all her resources to ensure their safety. Sometime later, our hero returns to his first dungeon and uses his spotted lizard summon to set yet another record, this time finishing in nearly 3 minutes. Although he makes the run look presentable on screen, his actual skill level is already good enough to compete on the world stage. By using speed runes on the lizard along with buffs from the Wind Falcon, breaking the record becomes effortless. After finishing, Jinyu turns off the recording and returns to the real world. The following day, he enters the Wednesday dungeon, which takes place in a frozen wasteland. This dungeon is known for its unique mechanic, a movement debuff that slows players down to a crawl, making progress extremely difficult. Shivering from the cold, he summons his Frost Cat, Wind Falcon, Titanium Golem, Horn Fairy, and the explosive Dragon Mage. Together, their cold resistance abilities make the environment manageable. As Jinu surveys the battlefield, he spots massive white gorillas charging toward them. He immediately orders the Titanium Golem to move forward and activate its shield while the Wind Falcon provides a speed boost. The entire team rides atop the golem like a moving fortress, pushing forward at full speed despite the harsh terrain. As they advance, Jinu struggles to keep himself from getting sick, having underestimated how rough the ride would be. The snow gorillas launch powerful snowball attacks, but the golem absorbs everything without difficulty. Not only that, it suddenly leaps upward as if gravity does not apply, scaling the side of the mountain with ease. Jinu then signals the Dragon Mage to prepare, drawing her attention to what lies ahead. As soon as they reach the ledge, a system warning appears, indicating that the dungeon boss is nearby. The gorilla boss Promax unleashes a deafening roar, but Jinu remains unfazed and immediately issues commands to the Horn Fairy. She flies ahead and uses her ability to destroy the boss's protective shield. Without wasting a second, he signals the Dragon Mage, who unleashes a devastating flame attack that engulfs the boss entirely. Within moments, the dungeon is cleared in under 5 minutes. Jinu celebrates briefly after setting another record, only to suddenly double over and vomit due to motion sickness from the intense ride. From that point on, headlines begin to flood the media, reporting on a mysterious no-ranker who is breaking national records across Korea. People soon realize that this is the same player who cleared the Tuesday dungeon, causing his popularity to skyrocket. Gossip spreads rapidly as he becomes the center of attention. Back at HQ, the director grows increasingly irritated as he reviews the headlines. His secretary informs him that this is the same player Assemblyman Park had mentioned earlier, the one tied to the rejected deal. The agreement was that Jinu would provide valuable information in exchange for low-rank summons, but Assemblyman Hisu opposed it, insisting that funds should not be released without proof. The director closes his eyes, realizing that the information had been legitimate all along. Taking a deep breath, he admits that while Hisu had a valid concern, results are what truly matter in politics. If they had supported Jinu from the start, their influence would have skyrocketed by now. Frustrated, he shifts the blame onto Hisu, claiming he squandered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Without hesitation, the director orders his secretary to contact Jinu directly. Now that it is clear he is not a fraud, they must bring him back at any cost. Meanwhile, the system mechanics become clearer. Monday and Wednesday dungeons reward runes, while Tuesday dungeons provide abrasives. Thursday dungeons, on the other hand, grant skill books. Although they do not offer overpowered abilities or skills beyond what the drill instructor can unlock, they still provide valuable enhancements for players. Because of this, Jinwoo does not bother with Sunday dungeons, as they offer the same rewards but with significantly higher difficulty. That is why the group chooses to rest on Sundays instead. In Thursday dungeons, players are immediately thrown into a boss fight upon entry. In this case, the Dirt Golem boss has incredibly high defense. Most players rely on White Wolves to reduce its defenses, but Jinwoo takes a different approach. Instead of relying on strategy alone, he overwhelms it with brute force and raw damage. Before starting, he switches off the recording device, knowing that this kind of run would not appeal to viewers. After all, most players do not have access to X-grade summons capable of replicating his strategy. To them, it would feel less like guidance and more like watching someone play with unfair advantages. Our boy makes up his mind to guide others by telling them to lower the boss's defenses using White Wolves before unleashing extreme damage dealers. Climbing onto his titanium golem, he recalls that the Dirt Golem's weak point is its head, which is why he uses his own golem to even the odds. As his summons prepare for battle, he commands them to focus all attacks on the head, a strategy that would make even Thor proud. The two giants clash in a brutal fistfight, while the drill instructor unleashes an ancient refined technique to carve through the Dirt Golem with precision. At the same time, the Dragon Mage rises high into the sky and summons her devastating Fire Dragon spell once again, reducing the Dirt Golem to nothing more than a lifeless shell. Moments later, the system announces that the dungeon has been cleared in just over 5 minutes. Watching the drill instructor, Jinwoo realizes just how broken his abilities truly are, and that there was probably a reason they were restricted before. Even so, he has no intention of abusing that power, knowing that with a properly trained Dragon Mage, he could already clear even the highest grade dungeons almost instantly. He starts doing the math in his head, estimating that including entry time, a full clear might take around 10 seconds. Waving at the drill instructor, he calls out that there is still time to squeeze in one more dungeon. Later, as he returns to the real world, two men in business suits approach him and ask if he is Jinwoo. They hand him a business card and introduce themselves as representatives from headquarters. He accepts the card half-heartedly and asks what they want from him this time. The black-haired man forces a polite smile and explains that they reviewed the proposal he submitted earlier, saying that the deal might actually be possible. However, before he can continue, Jinwoo raises his hand and cuts him off. With a calm smile, he tells them not to bother anymore. Both men are caught off guard by the sudden rejection. Jinwoo simply smiles, thinking back to how trusting and generous GA has been compared to the strict and greedy nature of headquarters. He explains that he is already affiliated with a company, and if they wish to discuss anything further, they should contact GA through his agency. With that, he walks away, leaving the two men completely confused. The brown-haired man guesses that it might be the same GA from the Daesung group, while the other decides it is best to return and investigate further. Deep down, however, he cannot shake the feeling that they have just missed out on a massive opportunity. Meanwhile, our hero stands atop a large rooftop, scanning the surroundings and deciding that the location will do. Shifting into preparation mode, he recalls that the Friday dungeon is completely different from the others. Instead of relying on summons to fight, it requires the summoner to physically traverse the area and clear it. That is why he has chosen to begin training ahead of time. Jinwoo summons a Sky Wyvern, a massive blue dragon-like creature, and peers over the edge, feeling a wave of fear despite having a protective shield in place. He calls out to his wyvern, asking if it is ready, then climbs on as they take off into the sky. At first, he keeps his eyes tightly shut out of fear, but he slowly opens them and realizes that the experience is far more enjoyable than he expected. Gaining confidence, he urges the wyvern to fly faster. Sometime later, he arrives at an unmarked island off the coast and summons the Dragon Mage along with the drill instructor. The instructor immediately praises his speed, but Jinwoo brushes it off as nothing special. The Dragon Mage then mentions how difficult it was when they first learned to ride wyverns, reminding him that they once trained with both wyverns and dolphins. When she praises him again, Jinwoo blushes slightly and thanks her, which leaves the drill instructor looking oddly dejected. Turning his gaze toward the ocean, Jinwoo declares that it is time to practice riding dolphins as well. He hypes them up, saying that learning from experienced riders like them will be the fastest way to improve. A few days later, the Friday dungeon finally opens. This dungeon is unique because it can reward top-tier runes. At the start, Jinwoo summons his Wind Falcon and orders it to grant him a speed boost. Taking his position, he waits for the countdown. The moment it begins, he bursts forward, skillfully dodging the incoming projectiles. Moving at incredible speed, he dashes past obstacles and decides to take a hidden route. Instead of crossing the water normally, he leaps into the ocean and summons his Sky Dolphin. Grabbing onto its fin, he takes a deep breath and dives beneath the surface, avoiding all the obstacles above. After reaching the other side, the dolphin launches into the air, and Jinwoo immediately summons his wyvern. Appearing right beneath him, it allows him to land smoothly on its back before soaring into the sky. From there, he flies over the remaining obstacles with ease, bypassing the entire course in a way that makes the designed path seem irrelevant. The rest of the run becomes effortless as he glides straight toward the finish line. Moments later, the system announces that the dungeon has been cleared. Jinwoo celebrates as he realizes he has completed it in just over 2 minutes, completely shattering the South Korean record. As a result, he receives a special reward for his performance. Flashing a confident peace sign, he rides off into the sky with his wyvern, marking yet another overwhelming victory. After clearing the Friday dungeon, it was noted that the Saturday dungeon had also appeared as black smoke rose from the dense forest. Jinnu controlled his summoned beast, directing it to retreat from the blazing flames behind them, while the large bird flew away from the forest. As the monsters were burned to ashes, the system announced that every monster had been annihilated and that the dungeon had been cleared with a time of 0 hours 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Later that evening, beneath a rocky mountain, as flocks of weary birds returned to their nests, it was recorded that the Sunday dungeon had likewise been cleared in record time. Jinnu and his companions attacked a humanoid monster, whose golden eyes shone as it spat blood. When the enemy collapsed, the system declared victory against a Grandmaster opponent and confirmed that the dungeon had been cleared. As Jinnu helped Pokryong to his feet, Ramba lay sprawled over Hongyo's head and commented that it had been quite a workout. While Hongyo observed that this was the result of all their training, Pokryong praised Jinnu, stating that he had performed remarkably well. Jinnu then wiped the sweat from his brow as the system congratulated him for shattering the South Korean national record with a time of 0 hours 13 minutes and 20 seconds, prompting him to sigh in relief as he remarked that all the low-grade dungeons had finally been cleared. Looking at the clear time of -0 hours 14 minutes and 50 seconds, he added that he needed to clear at least the high-tier dungeons and properly equip runes and skills before having the stats to consider the Tower of Trials. Recalling the image of himself standing before the towering structure, he reflected further on this goal. In the present, as Ramba gestured animatedly with Hongyo and Pokryong, Jinnu wondered whether 2 years would be enough. While the three continued their noisy banter, he calculated inwardly, glanced at his inventory, and considered the high-grade summoning scrolls he possessed, questioning what he should do with all the clear rewards. Meanwhile, at Ubayek's office, sunlight streamed through the window as Jia focused on her phone, reading headlines reporting that Hunter News claimed Dawek Jinnu had shattered every daily dungeon record. Broadcast reports questioned who Jinnu truly was, and Jia reflected that the entire world was losing its mind over him, reasoning that it was only natural after he had broken every record in a single week. She then called for Mr. Kim Byung, who immediately looked up from his computer and responded respectfully. When she asked about the video editing progress, he explained that he had completed the final cut, but hesitated. Another colleague asked if there was a problem, prompting him to clarify that it was not exactly an issue. He picked up the remote, turned on the large screen, and explained that even while editing, he could hardly believe what he was seeing, asking if they wanted to take a look. He added that the Thursday and Sunday dungeons had been omitted according to Jinnu's request. On the large screen, Jinnu was shown clinging to a sky dolphin as it moved beneath the sea. Jinnu sat watching intently, her fingers resting against her lips. In another scene, Jinnu held tightly to the dolphin's fin as it carried him through the ocean depths, and in another he rode a sky wyvern flying over the sea. Witnessing this, Jinnu exclaimed that it was impossible. As Jinnu quickly cleared the challenge while riding the wyvern, the footage continued. After the video ended, Kim explained that both Jinnu's strategy and his execution were on another level, adding that it resembled a performance. Jinnu Sanashid questioned whether such a feat was even possible, while a colleague expressed concern that even a perfectly produced film could not replicate something like this. Kim responded that even if they sold the footage, people would likely criticize them for being unable to reproduce it. However, Jiao stared at the footage and concluded that it only proved how incredible Jinnu truly was. She then outlined her plan, stating that before selling the footage, they should buy up every summon featured in the videos. Kim immediately understood and remarked that she intended to corner the market in advance. Jiao confirmed this and added that they needed to extract maximum profit from the information. Kim grabbed a tablet and said he would purchase as much as possible within their budget, but Jiao instructed him to disregard the budget and buy everything, adding that she would take out a loan under her own name if necessary. She typed rapidly, imagining herself securing maximum loan limits and gaining full support, and concluded that once the loans were secured and the summons purchased, it would be time to sell the information. Continuing her work, Jaya announced that the sales would be exclusive to players registered with the South Korean National Headquarters, with video information for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday priced at 100 million Korean won, and text information for Thursday and Sunday at 10 million Korean won. She added that all daily dungeon strategy guides would also be available for sale. Kim, sweating nervously, asked if it was acceptable to sell them at such a low price, but she explained that the strategy information would act as bait to sell the summons and would also benefit national progress. Another colleague asked how much they should list the cornered summons for. Jia paused before stating that C-rank summons should be priced at 200 million and B-rank summons at 1 billion. The employee reacted in shock, noting that this was 10 times the current market rate and questioning whether it would be too expensive. Thinking of wyverns, golems, and falcons, Jia explained that as the information spread, demand for those summons would naturally skyrocket. Imagining horned fairies, she added that since they controlled most of the supply, buyers would have no choice but to purchase from them. As she prepared to finalize the listing, she concluded that it was time to reap the rewards of her investment in Jinnu. My boy is being treated as an investment now. The employees behind Jia were stunned, and Kim asked if this was real, while she smiled faintly. On the screen, a revenue report displayed total sales of 377 billion Korean won. Shocked, the employees reacted in disbelief, but Jia questioned why they appeared discouraged when they had only just begun. Although her hands trembled, she tried to steady herself, realizing that the summons she had bought for 1.3 billion had grown into such an amount, and she reflected that Jinu's influence was immense. After calming herself, she declared that the business model had been proven, and that it was time to begin the real investment. The two employees remained stunned, one searching for his glasses while the other asked what she meant. Turning to them, she suggested that they should first buy a building, while they muttered that it was all because of Jinu. Meanwhile, Jinu sat on a park bench checking his phone. Seeing his account balance of 54,357,762 Korean won, he smiled in satisfaction, thinking that he had earned 54 million Korean won in a single week by selling high-grade scrolls. Beside him, Ramba remarked that the money could buy countless cream buns. Jinu, moved, commented that dungeon rewards were rewarding, prompting Ramba to ask whether he had pulled an X rank. Hearing this, Jinu asked if she had already forgotten. He recalled their past struggles, including digging through garbage and tearing countless scrolls with no results. Returning to the present, he lowered his head and stated that nothing had appeared even after tens of thousands of attempts. While Ramba sighed, he concluded that it was time to focus on training his existing summons rather than searching for new ones. Noticing something, he thought that he should sell the excess items he had gathered while running the loop and considered asking Jia for help. Holding his phone, he stared at Ajin's number and remembered that she had mentioned selling runes. He reasoned that since he would continue accumulating items, it would be better to entrust them to her, and he composed a message asking if she was available to meet, followed by another suggesting the vacant lot. Watching her previously give money to his mother, he thought that he could share the profits with her, recalling that she had helped cover his hospital bills. As he reviewed the message, he concluded that it was time to repay her. Later that day, the scene shifted to a cafe where Ajin's friends talked about having player boyfriends and showering them with gifts, while Ajin sat quietly in the corner, looking downcast. One of her friends noticed her and asked if she was all right. Ajin insisted that she was fine, but her friend responded that if she had any worries, she could share them. Though touched by their concern, Ajin knew she had to keep her situation a secret, as she was the sister of the player everyone had been talking about recently. Her brother had even set up a company to sell dungeon information. Suddenly, her phone rang. It was Jinu, asking if they could meet. Surprised, Jinu wondered if he was going to tell her something important. She quickly stood up and prepared to leave, but her friends reminded her that they were supposed to have dinner together that day. She explained that her brother had called, which left them shocked, and one of them asked if her brother had awakened from his coma. Ajin confirmed that he had before hurrying out. After she left, her friends began wondering if Ajin's brother was handsome. The scene then shifted to what Jinu referred to as a training ground, where his summons were engaged in intense combat as if everything depended on it. Hungyo was seen overseeing the training with strict focus. Ajin arrived and was immediately stunned by what she saw in front of her. Jinu's summons were fighting with relentless intensity, while Hungyo trained them as though he were not a summon himself. He briefly noticed Ajin but chose to ignore her. At that moment, a voice called out from behind her. When she turned, she saw Jinu, now far more muscular than before. She was left in shock, wondering what had happened to him, recalling that he used to be thin and frail like an average gamer. As she stood there processing the change, Jinu asked if she was all right. Regaining her composure, Ajin asked what his summons were doing and mentioned that their prices had skyrocketed. She thought about how rare those summons were, and recalled rumors that they had appeared in the videos sold by Yuba Cake. A realization struck her, and she asked if Jinu had been the one who set the record using those summons, which he did not deny. She then questioned how he had managed it. Jinu brought up Jia, and Ajin confirmed that she knew her. He explained that Jia had given him those rare summons, which left Ajin confused. She questioned how Jia could have given him something so valuable, considering how expensive those summons were, and Jinu responded that they had been gifts. This only deepened her confusion about their relationship. Snapping back to the present, Ajin asked why he had called her to meet. Jinu then asked if she was still selling runes before placing a large number of them in front of her. Shocked, Ajin asked how he had obtained so many runes. Jinu explained that he had acquired them by clearing dungeons. As she examined them, Ajin quickly realized that they were valuable and could be sold for a high price. Jinu noticed her familiarity with them and remarked that she seemed very knowledgeable. He then stated that he wanted her to sell all the runes for him. Ajin thought about it and felt confident that she could handle the task. She had always shown a strong business mindset even when they were younger. She then asked about his commission, thinking that she needed to consider her own future as well. Jinu asked how much she wanted, and Ajin replied that 8 to 10% was the usual rate. However, Jinu disagreed and proposed a 20% commission instead, offering her a far greater profit. Ajina was left stunned by his generosity. She became extremely happy, even thinking that her brother was incredibly kind. Jinu added that he would provide her with even more runes later, and that she needed to be ready to stay busy. Ajin was overwhelmed, realizing that selling all those items with such a high commission felt like an incredible opportunity. She was deeply moved by her brother's kindness, tears forming in her eyes, as she began to believe that becoming a professional merchant was now within her reach. Thinking to himself, our boy realizes that he can now entrust the dungeon rewards to Ajin. Meanwhile, Pokryong is seen clearing a dungeon seriously, casting a huge fire dragon that instantly wipes out all the enemies. Our boy remarks that having a powerful damage dealer is a requirement for any strong player, praising Pokryong and stating that at this rate he can now clear D-ranked dungeons with ease. In response, Pokryong thanks our boy. Our boy then reflects that it has been a while since he and Pokryong have been inside a dungeon together while patting his head. He also notes that his summons are being trained well by Hungyo, as an image of Ramba begging to be taken along appears in his mind. Summons can roam for several hours without their player and can even unsummon themselves at any time. The scene then shifts to the dungeon, where our boy and Pokryong are walking together. Our boy asks Pokryong what she wants, when suddenly a goblin jumps out of nowhere and attacks them, but Pokryong reacts swiftly and one-shots it. Repeating his question, our boy explains that other summons have their own desires, like Hunyo, who enjoys training, and Ramba, who likes cream buns. He adds that if there are any rewards she wants, she should say so. Pokryong replies that she is satisfied just being helpful to Jinnu, which deeply touches our boy. He insists that she must want something but simply is not saying it. Thinking to himself, our boy knows that summons do not need to eat, yet he still shares his food with humanoid summons like his EX summons. Realizing that Ramba enjoys cream buns, he concludes that they must have taste buds as well. After thinking, Pokryong says that she wants a dessert, specifically strawberry cake, then suddenly remembers and adds chicken and beer. Taken aback by the request, our boy says that he will grant it and asks Pokryong what skill she wants to learn next. Pokryong replies that she wants to learn Dragon Arts Link. After receiving the message, our boy tells her that she will undergo special training to master the skill, which delights Pokryong. He then adds that afterward they will have the chicken and beer she requested and celebrate together. Overcome with joy, Pokryong says that she will work hard so they can have their break soon. Our boy then notices that she seems more excited about the break than the food. The scene then shifts to a construction site where Jueo and her trio are present. Byung-jin asks Jueo how she found the place, and she replies that she bought it from her grandfather. She explains that she plans to build the Yubok headquarters and points to a distant area where the office will be located. She also plans to build a bunker in every building. Remembering the promise she made to our boy, she reflects that she must protect his family. She also thinks that the open space would be perfect for a training ground. She asks Byung-jin if he obtained the shadow wolf she requested, and he nods before asking what she plans to do with it. Jueo replies that she will give it to someone. The scene shifts to a restaurant where Ajin and her friends are eating. One of her friends asks if she will really treat them at such an expensive place, and Ajin agrees, even boasting that they can order anything they want. She thinks about Jinnu, realizing that because of the runes he gave her, her sales have skyrocketed and her number of customers has increased rapidly. Suddenly, one of her friends asks if they know Bike Jinnu, which makes Ajin react. Her friend explains that Jinnu has broken multiple records several times, and the others comment that he is amazing, making Ajin feel proud as she agrees. Suddenly, one of them wonders if he has a girlfriend, which shatters Ajin's mood. Another friend notices that Ajin has accidentally broken the chopsticks she is holding and asks if she is that hungry. Then suddenly, one of her friends notices a notification on Ajin's phone stating that Jia has just followed her. Shocked, Ajin hurriedly checks her phone and confirms that it is true, which makes her flustered. She then remembers that Jia is acquainted with her brother, so it is natural that she followed her back. Her friends become extremely excited, wondering how it happened, and even a waiter asks them to quiet down. Suddenly, Jia sends her a message asking if she is Ajin, which shocks her. Jia then asks if they can meet tomorrow if she has free time, causing Ajin to scream in shock throughout the restaurant. The scene shifted into a busy city as a luxury car slowly pulled over. Ajin was greeted by Jia before the two entered the car together. During the ride, Ajin appeared noticeably nervous as she asked whether Jia had already agreed to meet their family, which she confirmed. Jia explained that Jinnu had been extremely busy lately, and because of that she originally planned to send the gifts under his name. However, given the circumstances, she decided to personally deliver them instead. Hearing that deeply touched Ajin. She thought that most people would simply send the gifts through delivery services, but Jia cared enough about Jinnu to personally visit his family. Ajin even admitted that she felt jealous of her brother for being close to someone like Jia. To break the awkward atmosphere, Jia asked whether their parents would mind her arriving without notice. Ajin reassured her that she had already informed them earlier that they would be receiving a visitor, although their parents still had no idea that Jinnu had become famous. Ajin also admitted that she had been carrying the burden of hiding the truth from their parents all by herself, causing both girls to burst into laughter together. The scene then shifted to their home, as Ajin called out to her parents. Meanwhile, Jia quietly observed the house and thought that although it was small, it felt warm and cozy. Their parents soon appeared and curiously asked who the visitor was. The moment they saw Jia, both of them were completely stunned by her beauty. Their father even wondered if Ajin had always known someone so pretty, but Ajin quickly denied it. Jia politely introduced herself as Jia from the Yubayak family. Afterward, Ajin pulled her parents aside and explained everything to them. Following a long conversation, the family was left utterly shocked after learning that Jinnu was actually a famous player, while Jia was the CEO of his company. Jia personally confirmed the story, leaving them even more speechless. They could hardly believe that someone as important as her had personally visited their humble home, almost like royalty arriving in person. Jia then explained that protecting Jinu's family was part of their official contract before handing them a handbook. Their parents were left stunned after discovering that they would receive free healthcare along with a monthly allowance of 10 million won. Seeing their shocked reactions, Jiao explained that compared to Jinu's achievements, those benefits were insignificant. She then revealed that she had prepared even more gifts for them, leaving the family even more overwhelmed. Jiao summoned her system window before turning toward their father. She explained that Jinu once mentioned how much his father loved summons, which he immediately confirmed while talking about their pebble golem. After hearing that, Jiao gifted him a B-rank diamond golem summon. She then turned toward their mother and presented her with a B-rank rainbow snail summon that could help with skincare. Ajin quickly chimed in, saying that their parents were incredibly lucky to receive such amazing gifts. However, Jiao revealed that there was also a present prepared for Ajin. She summoned the shadow wolf that Ajin had always wanted, leaving her completely speechless. Ajin could hardly believe what she was seeing and even wondered if she was dreaming. The family then turned toward Jiao and asked whether they were truly allowed to accept all these expensive gifts, causing Jiao to laugh warmly at their reaction. Later, the group shared a meal together at a restaurant. During dinner, their mother mentioned that Jinu had always been obsessed with gaming ever since he was a child. Their father agreed and added that whenever Jinu became interested in something, he devoted himself to it completely. Jinu jokingly commented that although her brother was amazing, praising him non-stop for an entire year felt a little excessive. However, their father corrected her and explained that Jinu had actually been playing games for more than 10 years. Hearing that revelation shocked both Jinu and Ajin, who immediately asked if it was true. Their father then recalled an old memory from when Jinu was still in middle school. One day, he had fallen asleep while playing a game called Battle of Summons, or something similar. Their father admitted that he had been genuinely worried because Jinu continued playing the same game all the way through high school. After hearing the story, both girls arrived at the same shocking conclusion. If someone had spent 10 entire years mastering that terrible game, then there could only be one possible identity for Jinu. He had to be Jinu God, the legendary #1 ranked player in the game.